Good afternoon. How are you doing today? I wasn't available yesterday because I was up in Baltimore for part of the day. I was working on a case, and between those two events, it was dark, it was late, so I apologize. And yesterday was a big deal. There was all sorts of things going on, hells of popping stuff. First of all, my weather report, 75 to 79. The birds are out. It's pleasant, it's still, with a very slight breeze. End of the Jefferson report, weather report. So, what's at the top of the list? Well, it has to be what happened in the House, the crazy goings on. Now, can you imagine anybody saying that that's the best deliberative body in the world? I don't think so. Now, I will say that the Dems, they held together, and it's been a while since I've been in their meetings, their caucuses. When I was staff, I would often have issues or be asked to attend, and in those circumstances, a guy like me who was a staffer would likely not say much, but would hear everything, and that was the value of it. And plainly the Democrats saw former Speaker McCarthy on the talking head shows on Sunday blasting the Dems, when the very next day or so he was going to need them to vote for him. And you know, there's a lot of S&M in politics, but you know, going and supporting the guy who spent Sunday on all the airwaves attacking you doesn't strike me as a way to win a vote. The persuasive effect of an individual must involve some comity, must involve some mutual agreement based on something. Usually involves negotiation, meaning you have to actually talk to each other, and then planning. And there are ways to monitor the vote as it's happening. In fact, when you're in the floor of the House, there's a huge board that becomes visible, and you can see each person voting, and you can decide to vote, and then you may change your mind before the vote is closed. And some people may wait and see how people they respect are voting and consider what's going on. Now, the most important number yesterday was the number 8, which if you lay it on its side is infinity, you know, the lemma. So the infinity is about how long it would take as compared to when McCarthy became Speaker to get a vote that would make him Speaker again. Because not only was he dissing Dems, apparently he was telling members of the Republican caucus one thing and doing something else, or pulling back on it. So, arrogance. I don't know what else. I guess he thought he was beholden. I mean, it's a thankless job having these 8 people, a bunch of moderates, and then some sort of definition of conservative that splits the body of the Republicans, quote, in control, into 3 different units. And it's very clear that when the separation between the number of Democrats and Republicans is so narrow, in which you have to get 5 votes as a Republican to prevail, and he lost 8, and all the Dems voted, although there were a couple who weren't present, like former Speaker Pelosi, who was concerned about her colleague in government and longtime friend, and for whom they were having memorial services because of a recent death. So, what do we have? Well, let's take McCarthy at his word. He said today he was glad he could serve America, but he didn't. He disserved America in the most obvious ways. He lied to the people that were necessary, both Republicans and Democrats, to find a way through the division that is, in my opinion, entirely from the Republicans. The Republican notion of negotiation is they meet, they tell you what they want, and it's take it or leave it. I know this from experience because when I was on the Hill, I saw the change from when I had tours of duty on the Senate side to when I had tours of duty on the House side. And by the time I went to the House, there was very little camaraderie, even among people who disagreed. And my earliest experience with Republicans and Democrats getting along was Orrin Hatch and Senator Ted Kennedy. I'd worked on Ted Kennedy's campaign for president in 1980, and I came to the House appointed by Orrin Hatch to run an investigation on the Labor Committee, and it was about the confirmation hearings of Raymond, I don't know any mobsters, Donovan. The FBI said Donovan was not mobbed up, but then had reports that he was, and I wrote a report about that. And the first time I saw Ted at the committee, he said, does Orrin know about us? And I said, yes. So those two got along on a bunch of health issues, and they disagreed on a bunch other. And I think they were very close friends. And I think that, well, Orrin was somewhat puzzled by Ted, but had a great affection for him. I don't know, among the 435 members of the House of Representatives, how much of that there is. So, who do we have getting ready to succeed McCarthy? Well, first of all, we can't ignore the fact that he got to pick his first man or woman after it should happen, as it did happen, that he was booted out of office. And this little guy, Patrick McHenry, the first thing he does is not to try to find some way to reach across the line and say, let's sit down and talk about this again, like tomorrow, okay? Off the record, or something like that. Nothing. Instead, to get even, he says, well, you know that office that Pelosi has on the Capitol? Forget that. She's not going to have that anymore. Now, these things they're not so much privileges, they're more for homage. And the people who have these offices, and they're not spacious, although there are exceptions to that, they're often in a leadership position, or they're older, and so it shows some respect for their contribution. And in that vein, when Nancy became Speaker and had the opportunity, she provided for space for Hastert, a former Republican Speaker, when he was not in office as the Speaker, because she was in the position to do that. So there is a tradition of honoring each other, even in your differences, that does not really exist, at least among the leadership of the Republicans. So, who is going to try to take over these offices? Well, they're now going to attack Gaetz because he brought the issue to the floor. But there's nothing bogus about it. I mean, it's one of those few times when you can say, well, Gaetz is right about some of the things he said. There was an agreement they had with him. He breached it. There were misrepresentations McCarthy made to the conference. And then there were misrepresentations that he made to the Democrats and apparently to the president. So how do you deal with a person like that? Not only do they not want to negotiate, they're never going to tell you the truth. You can't work with somebody like that. So who's going to substitute? Well, we got No Jacket Jordan I guess he's throwing his shirt into the ring. And Scalise, didn't dodge the bullet. Scalise is also going to run. Now, here's the Zen question. How do you take those 8 votes and get, I don't know, I guess it's probably 5 of them? How do you get 5 people, or the 8 in your caucus, to choose you, No Jacket Jordan, or didn't dodge the bullet Scalise? When I say didn't dodge the bullet, you may remember there was a shooting while these guys were playing games over near Alexandria, and he took a shot. And then after that, he continued to remain a maniac on Second Amendment issues. Everybody should have a gun. So what, they can shoot him again? You can't fix stupid. That's my assistant always told me. And let's face it, as a lawyer, if you're doing your job, you're representing someone who either made a mistake or is presumed to have made a mistake or falsely accused of making a mistake. And, you deal with the misunderstood and abused as a lawyer. And in politics, the art of politics, which is the art of the possible, how do you find a solution that can solve as much of the irritation and difference as possible. And it's not possible with the Republicans. And I'm not even going to try to deal with the math. There is one math equation that I would like to deal with, which is if the Democrats could get 5 or 6 votes from the moderates and the Republican, then the minority leader, Jeffries, he could be the speaker. Now, some may say, oh, that's crazy, what are you talking about, and so forth. Well, if you had adults, we maybe could make this work. Parliaments all the time find a way to cooperate. Maybe not for long, and maybe for long, it depends. But what we need in the Congress is like in a parliamentary procedure, a coalition government in which Republicans and Democrats who can work together do. But I think it would take a lot of courage for the Republicans to wrap their minds around it. And the fear is unlimited among these politicians. I mean, it's way out there. So, what about the civil case? Let's talk a little bit about why is Trump attending the trial? He's attending the trial because he's terrified. He's terrified of losing his businesses, his false brand about how wealthy and smart he is, what a genius he is in economics and finance. And the truth is, people who cheat and lie sometimes obtain fabulous results. But he doesn't even do that. You know, the guy's a failed casino operator. His businesses are all BS. He lies about the size of the buildings. He lies about the value of his own apartment. He gives the wrong number of feet for how large or small it is. So we have him up there coming to the court. Why is he coming? Why is he coming to this proceeding? This is make or break for him. And I think he sees it 2 ways. If he's sitting there, center table, and he's looking at a witness, does he hope that by his very presence, he intimidates that witness, coerces and threatens him? Is that what the press conference is before he goes into court and when he comes out of court, saying the false things he does to perpetuate this myth that he is the righteous one in this equation? But things are changing. And how are they changing? This judge drew the line when Trump attacked one of his staff, a younger person, and the picture that was posted of her. And there were a series of sealed meetings with counsel. Those sealed meetings should be open. We should know what was said in those meetings. There's no jury. It's only the judge. So why don't we know what happened? And I think we should know what happened, because the world should know how we're handling Trump in a courtroom as he tries to cheat justice. Trump goes out of the courtroom and says, oh, the judge is going to change his mind about some of his decisions before the trial. And the judge had to say in open court, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not changing my position. So we have this situation in which, like a mobster, he's in the courtroom. Now, what else does he want to do? He wants to delay this trial into the other trials. He wants to create a logjam. He wants to be able to defy the proceedings as they go forward. Now, I think that the message is sneaking into our reality that this is what Trump is doing. This is what his aides are doing. This is big steel, Roman numeral 2. That is to win the presidential election and to do the best he can. But of course, this case that's in New York we're talking about is a civil case, not a criminal case. There's no pardon that would operate if it was a criminal case, but there's nothing he can do to the verdict of the judge, because he can say what he may, But he asked for a judge trial. He did not want a jury. And so he's trying to give one argument outside the courtroom while acting differently inside the courtroom. So I've seen this before in a minor way. I've had the experience myself when some local press in what I consider a small but important matter to the people I was involved with, they were talking about how I would lose it and things like that. But there was a very different proceeding going on in the courtroom. And that's what's happening here on a much larger scale, with so much more preparation going back to 2018. And so that's what we have to look at. That is that we still have creaking along functional aspects of our three-partite government, and we have to do everything we can to encourage that, because that's our pathway back to democracy and the preservation of our republic. So that's what I got today, and I will probably try to be out tomorrow so we can talk. All the best. Bye-bye.